show the prisoner who now stands before you was caught red-handed showing feelings of an almost human nature.
I think for a lot of people, a lot of the experiences that you have during your teenage years are things that you won't ever forget, and they were kind of pivotal experiences and moments in your life. Those are some of the most amazing years of your life that I didn't get to have. That time in prison took so many experiences away from me. Christy convinced me to confess at her mother's house. That's when she told me that she was the one who had killed Joey. She started telling me things like, I need you to take the blame for it. I need you to do this. You're 13, nothing will happen to you. They don't punish children. Nothing's gonna happen to you. And of course, me, who never as much been sent to the principal's office before, believed her. Christy was the only connection that I had to my father's family. As far as I was concerned, you know, she practically walked on water. And so I agreed.
Okay, this is, my name is James Lindsay, and this is Officer Shannon Williams. We were the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department, and your name is Tyler Edmonds, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you're age 13?
Yes, sir.
The cops initially called my mom and said, hey, we need to talk to Tyler. They asked my mother to step out of the room, and then another investigator slides in the room when they've got her occupied, and he's holding up papers in his hand, flashing them in my face, saying, we already know that you did this. Christy told us all about it. After I said, I don't believe you, they go and get Christy and bring Christy in, who's in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. Those pressures combined just broke me, and that's when I said, okay, I'll tell you.
The facts. In May 2003, just before taking Edmonds on a weekend trip to the Mississippi coast, she shot Joey in the head as he slept. Prosecutors said Fulgham killed her husband to get money from him, possibly to cash in his life insurance policy, after she left him for another man. But her lawyers argued that her husband had abused her. The sordid nature of the killing convulsed Edmonds' hometown and attracted national attention. Over the years, it would be covered by Court TV, reenacted on Snapped and Blood Relatives, and analyzed on Inside the Box and Dr. Phil. After they returned from the coast, Fulgham was arrested, and investigators from the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office asked Edmonds' mother to bring him for questioning. By then, Fulgham had told detectives that he'd helped her shoot her husband, but Edmonds and his mother, Sharon Clay, didn't know that. At first, the skinny 7th grader denied participating in the killing, but he changed his story after Clay was taken from the interview room, a legal police tactic in Mississippi murder cases, and investigators brought Fulgham in to speak to him privately. They conducted a videotaped interview in which Edmonds, hands fidgeting and his voice soft, said he and Fulgham had pulled the trigger together.
An estimated 200,000 kids are tried, sentenced, or incarcerated as adults every year in the U.S. But what happens when a child lies during a police interrogation, not lies to deny, but falsely confesses to a murder he didn't commit? Now, Tyler was a 13-year-old honor student in Mississippi with no history of violence. So it was a complete shock to his small community when Tyler was arrested and charged with the murder of his sister's husband in May 2003. He spent 6 years in adult prison before he was discovered as innocent and released. Take a look.
My half-sister killed her ex-husband and wanted me to take the blame for it because I was 13 and she told me that I would get a slap on the wrist. I did it because she was my sister and I loved her. I was convicted and I was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole until age 65. In prison, it was an awful place. I mean, just fights, riots. It was horrible. I got out of prison by winning an appeal and having my conviction overturned by the state Supreme Court.
My God.
The truth finally came out.
I'm so glad this is over. It's been a long, hard road.
We felt the jury would do the right thing.
People ought to really realize that our system is very fallible, that there are people that are innocent that are in prison.
Wanted man in California, wanted man in Ohio, wanted man in Kansas City, wanted man in Buffalo, wanted man in Oklahoma, wanted man in old Cheyenne. Wherever you might look tonight, you might see this wanted man. Well, I might be in Colorado or Georgia by the sea, working for some man who may not know who I might be. Yeah, and if you see me coming and you know who I am, don't you breathe it to nobody, 'cause you know I'm on the lam. Wanted.
The interrogation of suspects is critical to any criminal investigation. A suspect might lie or tell the truth. They may be innocent or guilty. Interrogation is a high-stakes game. Too much pressure, and an innocent person might confess to a crime they didn't commit.
Most people like to think that there is no such thing as a false confession, that someone would never confess to the crime they didn't commit. They themselves believe that they never could be forced to confess to something they didn't really do. Yet evidence shows, under the right conditions, people will make false confessions.
So why would someone risk ruining the rest of their life by confessing to a crime they didn't commit?
Most people have the perception that a police interrogation is a highly intense, very emotional, confrontational type of interview. But in fact, the more productive interview is not of that form. More often than not, an interrogator who's using the accusatory style has already developed a preconception before he comes into the interview room. And what he does is uses that narrow vision and begins to attack his subject.
Kaysen has spent decades studying why people admit to things they didn't do and how difficult it is for juries and the public to accept it. He categorizes false confessions into 3 types: those made by people seeking escape from a stressful situation, those made by people made to believe that they actually committed the crime, and those made voluntarily, often by children, who tend to be more open to manipulation and less apt to consider long-term consequences. Edmonds falls into the last category. Kids in particular, the reason they give voluntary false confessions is to protect someone else, he said. Kaysen analyzed Edmonds' confession a decade ago during his appeals. He found that Edmonds had clearly been influenced by his half-sister, but he also concluded that because Edmonds was so young, authorities should have scrutinized his involvement more closely. They should have known better.
I can still hear the voice of the court clerk. We, the jury, find the defendant, and there was this dramatic pause, not guilty, and I just fell apart. I mean, it was like having a parked car on top of you, and someone breathed life back into you. There's a Rascal Flatts song that's called I'm Moving On. And part of the lyrics in that song are that I never dreamed home would end up where I don't belong, and that's kind of how I feel about Mississippi. Is I love Mississippi, but because I think that the only thing that the people there will ever allow me to be is that 13-year-old who went to prison, I don't belong there. I don't feel like I have a place there.
I told him, you probably need to go somewhere where they don't know the notoriety of the case, and you can make a fresh beginning. And that's what he did.
Jim Wade started a zealous crusade to have the teen acquitted, proclaiming he was innocent from Okeechobee County Circuit Court to the Mississippi Supreme Court. Wade's tenacity paid off when the state's highest court overturned the conviction and granted Edmonds a new trial. He was acquitted by a jury in 2008 and began his new life as a free man. It was a great feeling knowing that I was acquitted, Edmonds said. I was more relieved than anything, but being released was tough. I went from being a kid whose parents told me what to do to being in a controlled environment and having people tell me what to do. When I was on bail before the second trial, I was limited to where I could go. Then suddenly I was acquitted and released. It was a tough transition. I would go out and people would spot me and know who I was and make comments. I wasn't really treated negatively, but I couldn't go anywhere. It seemed like everyone knew me as Tyler from TV, and not a lot of people took the time to get to know who I am.
I'm just a kid and life is a nightmare. I'm just a kid, I know that it's not fair. Nobody cares 'cause I'm alone and the world is having more fun than me tonight. And maybe when the night is dead, I'll crawl into my bed. I'm staring at these four walls again. I'll try to think about the last time I had a good time. Everyone's got somewhere to go, and they're gonna leave me here on my own. And here it goes. I'm just a kid and life is a nightmare. I'm just a kid, I know that it's not fair. Nobody cares 'cause I'm alone and the world is having more fun than me. What the hell is...
Getting the compensation from the state means everything to me in the sense that it is my opportunity to say, let me help you in a way that I probably won't ever have the opportunity to do otherwise. For people who say or believe that the state didn't do anything wrong, the investigators and the district attorney took advantage of my age and my naivety and used that to benefit themselves in the form of maybe being able to say that they solved a case. You don't take advantage of children. I don't care what your reasonings are. You don't do that to a child. For some reason, money seems to get their attention, and if for no other reason, at least they know that I didn't just roll over, that I stood up for myself.